Hey, pre-huddle.
Yeah, yeah. So, how's it been? How was your week?
It's fair. Programming away, and I consume more content on YouTube, specifically around Y Combinator, than I think any other person alive in 2023,
Wow. That's crazy. That's
with
crazy.
emphasis on 2023. So,
Mm.
which is one of the agendas or topics that, or the topic that I think we should talk about. But before we talk about that, how's everything with you?
Well, stressful, very stressful. Um, let's just say being a software engineer at one of the top software engineering companies isn't all sunshine and rainbows.
No, it's not Skittles.
Yeah, it's quite it's quite a lot, you know. So yeah, and it's one of those things where all my life I had always dreamed of working at, of, being a this level of software engineer is something that I read lots and lots of books. I remember agonizing over like little details. It was so bad that during my grandfather's funeral, I was reading C++, you know.
Dork.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So,
mhm.
so let's let's take that. Uh, it's not all rainbows, especially when you make it to a certain level of software development. And let's focus that on today's topic of in 2023, and today is the 15th of January, 2023. People want to be software developers, and that number is climbing. That number is probably doubling every couple of years because the barrier to entry is not what it used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and definitely 15 years ago. Um, why do you think that is? Well, first, do you agree? And then could you
Well,
elaborate?
uh, I think you're right. I think yes, the barrier is a lot less now. Um, but at the same time, I think things are a lot more messy, compared to before. Because if you remember, in the 2000s, there was only one operating system to care about, aka Windows. And Windows had exactly one UI framework that you cared about, right? Which was Windows Forms. And more often than not, you are either writing uh, Visual Basic or C++ or something, right? And the number of things you needed to learn were just fixed. There was just five, six things you learn, and that's it. Um, Earlier than that was probably C. I think during the command line era, um, you would probably learn C, or you would learn Basic, or you would learn uh, Turbo Pascal, and that was it. You're a programmer. Congratulations. You can go and get a job now. But in 2023, there's just so much you need to learn, right? For you to even do anything productive, you have to learn HTML, then learn CSS, then learn JavaScript, then learn a JavaScript framework, and then you learn the Node.js, and then you have to learn one of the Node.js server-side frameworks, and then you have to learn, there was just there's so much that goes into software engineering now than back in the day. But at the same time, the barrier is a lot lower because back then, if you didn't know something, you didn't know something. You'd have to read it in a book, right? You'd have to like buy a book and read it, and if you did not read it and you didn't understand it, good luck, right? But now you have Google, you have a lot of resources, you have Stack Overflow. Oh my God, um, yeah, a lot of. It's like what you said, Scott. Like every 5 years, the number of programmers doubles, which effectively means that at any given point in time, half of the software engineers have less than 5 years of experience. So there are many, many people that don't know what it was like pre Stack Overflow, like writing code before Stack Overflow was a thing, you know, where many people don't even know what it's like coding with a machine that is offline.
So let's dive into it.
Mm,
Silence this phone. First of all, like let's try to communicate to the audience that decides that they want to be a software developer, right?
mhm,
Because unlike when I was going through it, a university degree was required.
mhm,
Every job or the majority of jobs, it was required to have a bachelor's degree, either in computer engineering or computer science. And I'm not sure if that's the case anymore for the majority of jobs that need a software developer. And so some topics that maybe we can touch on is, well, again, it's 2023, and for people that want to be software developers, we first have to ask the question why, right? And if you're
mm.
viewing this, why do you, whoever this viewer is, why do you want to be? Why are you entertaining the idea of a software developer? Is it the money? It's probably the biggest reason. Is it the status? Like when people ask, "What do you do?" I develop, right? Or is it the freedom, right? Having the ability, especially post COVID, to work from home, to be a digital nomad, right? Um, so maybe we could just discuss why, in which we can touch on the aspects of money or status or freedom. What are your thoughts?
Well, here's the thing, right? You can't really knock on people's motivations, um, because you have to be motivated. If you're going to be a software engineer in 2023, you have to be motivated, and your motivation has to be ironclad level of motivation. In my years of talking to people, getting this question asked several times, oh, I want to be a software engineer, what does it take? In my experience, the people who are really, really successful are the ones who are like motivated to the core, right? Who, in the face of absolute, you know, difficulty, are willing to keep pushing on. And yeah, it takes a certain kind of person, you know. Um,
Is motivation really the right word? I'm kind of challenging because I feel like it's kind of a marathon. It's grit, which I would say is massive and consistent action
mm,
for a marathon-like duration, right? So this isn't, oh, it's 2023 New Year's. All right, I want to lose weight,
yeah.
and for the first like 3 weeks, everybody's at the gym, and then it returns back to normal, right?
Mm.
It's not like that, is it?
No, no, no. It can't be like that. Because for you to, there's this very wonderful graph I know I've seen before. I don't know if you've seen it, where they plotted the graph of um, effort versus results, right? So when you start out any activity, doesn't matter what the activity is initially, you would have to put in a lot of effort for very little reward, right? And that part of the graph where that happens is called the valley of frustration. That's what it's called. And the problem with software engineering is that that valley of frustration is very, very wide. It can be as wide as 2 3 years for some people, right? But the thing is, once you come out of that valley of frustration, then the job becomes rewarding. Then the software engineering becomes rewarding. Then the practices become rewarding because now, For every unit of effort you're putting in, you are getting multiples of, or you're getting multiples of reward for that effort. So it's kind of like that, in the sense that most people are just stuck in that valley of frustration when it comes to software engineering. Maybe they started it because they like the money, they have a friend who is making so much money, or like you said, they see that the person has, they see people who have like freedom to, like yourself, for example, who is a contractor and everything, who gets to do, like, you get to pick your hours, you get to choose when you want to work, you can decide to take a vacation, and it's no big deal. And someone sees your lifestyle and it's like wants to imitate it, not realizing that there was this whole chasm of frustration that you had to go through, and that you are on the other side of, you know. So I think that's the um I think that's what it really takes, really, you know.
Yeah, and that's kind of the expectations part that we're going to dive in deeper. But to your point, it's it's ironic that everybody wants to be a beast, but they're not willing to do what a beast has to do in order to earn that title,
Yeah.
right? Consistently, right? So so when we're talking about the topic of why in 2023 someone wants to be a software developer, we discuss money and well, what type of money is out there? And I guess the response is it depends on what area you're in, right? Not just the United States, but are you in like are you in the Bay Area or are you in New York City? Are you in East Cleveland, right? Or are you in Bangladesh, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Vietnam. So down here in Florida, it depends, but I tend to tell people you can go from zero to rock star, and everything's relative, right?
Hmm.
Hence the term rock star. But I think you could go from I think you could go from a beginner developer to senior, I believe, with massive and consistent action. I sincerely believe in 18 to 24 months. However, well, let me go back a little bit. And within 18 to 24 months, I sincerely believe that you can go from, let's say, 60,000 a year to, I would say, 160,000 a year. I sincerely believe that. Now,
I
what percent?
disagree.
Well, it. I was going to follow up with what percentage of people can actually achieve that, and I would say probably your one percenters, right? All right. So
Fair enough.
I can't really do the math, but out of 1 million people that decide that they're going to be self-declared programmers in 2023, what's 1% of 1 million? Is it 10,000? I can't do the math.
Yeah, it's 1% is 10,000. Yes.
Yeah, then you may have 10,000 people that go above and beyond within that 18 to 24 months
I think
because
I think
okay.
it's even less than that, honestly. I think so. Just to redefine the parameters, right? If you're talking competent developer, then the answer is yes. And in fact, I've actually seen it before. But if you're talking senior developer, senior engineer, I think you need to be at least 3 years, right? To be considered senior. Because you have to
It's
remember that to be a senior, right, you have to be able to. So, what's the role of a senior? The role of a senior is to lead the direction of projects, right? Is to make technical decisions, is to nurture junior developers, right? So, helping junior developers to ramp up quickly on a project, to learn the ways of the trade and stuff like that. And I don't think there's any way you can
nope,
get that knowledge in one year.
nope. That's where
Okay.
we disagree.
Okay, what do
All
you think?
right. So I moved from Cleveland, Ohio to Florida. I went from a junior developer to a senior developer in 6 months, only because I declared myself a senior developer and I backed it up with massive and consistent action, right? So I don't necessarily believe that it takes 3 years of working within an office environment and going to stand-ups and
No, 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 no. I was saying 3 years from zero, meaning you were never a developer, you decided to become a developer, and you want to become a senior developer. That journey is at least 3 years. There's no,
that jour-
yeah,
that
you can't
journey.
tell me otherwise, Scott. You
Well,
can't tell me
well,
otherwise.
I would say that that journey
Hmm.
is how quickly you can get to close to 10,000 hours, right? Now, if we say 10,000 hours, right, 10,000 hours comes from, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Mastery,
yeah, of
right?
course.
So I think that 10,000 hours was more related to 5 years.
Hmm.
If we're considering like 40 hours a week, I can't do the math,
Yeah.
IDK. But to me, a senior developer, yes, it can be what you described, and the expectations from mainstream is exactly what you detailed.
Hmm.
But honestly, I think a senior developer is someone that has thoughtfully planned, um, made alterations, shipped and measured and monitored something. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be on a team, I don't think. It means that you went through the software development life cycle, you've experienced pain in every single phase of that software development life cycle, and you came out experienced on lessons learned. I can tell you the areas that I struggled and I failed at, but I did ship, I did succeed relatively, whatever that definition is. So I think it's just a different perspective.
I'm going to disagree with you on this
Okay.
because what you've just described, in my opinion, is a mid-level engineer, not a senior engineer. Because
Okay.
I will give you, I have numerous examples. So, classic example number one.
Remember, we're talking about the why, and the
Hmm.
subtopic of the why section
Hmm.
is money,
I get you.
right? When
Yes.
you deliver something and it's
Hmm.
and people value it,
Hmm.
regardless of how many years you have, doesn't matter. You produce something that is of value that people are using and
So,
people rely on.
here's my standard or definition, right? Anybody can claim, like you said, anybody can claim that they're a senior engineer, right? And for the most part,
Maybe we should
yeah.
stop using the term engineer then, because I think that's where you have disagreement. Because an engineer is someone that I would argue uses empirical data to measure the quality of their work and to forecast, what's to come by data and using that data to make informed decisions. I would say that's an engineer, right? They use metrics, whereas a developer, not so much.
Huh. I,
But I'm listening.
I okay. So if okay, let you know what, just so that we don't get derailed, right? Let's say senior developer, junior developer, mid-level developer, right? Here's my definition. You are a junior developer if you are still green in the game. You know the syntax, you know how to write software, but you don't know what goes into working software, right? You haven't really, maybe you haven't been responsible for, you haven't been part of a team that shipped anything, or even if you are part of a team that shipped anything, you don't really know you don't really see the full picture of what it is you shipped, right? That is a junior developer. A mid-level developer has more experience than a junior developer. He or she has shipped the software before. He or she has good understanding of how all the different components of a good software system is, including, like you said, getting metrics, figuring things, fixing bugs, solving issues. A mid-level developer has that context. But a senior developer is someone who knows, doesn't just understand the system and the application, but understands all the other aspects, because there are certain problems that only senior developers can tackle that junior or mid-level developers cannot tackle. And I'll give you an example. So while I was at cyberspace, right, we had so many senior engineers, but truth be told, there were just two of us that were truly senior engineers. The rest were just mid-level engineers. And I'll give you an example. There was a bug that showed up in production where the application kept leaking memory, right? So you deploy the app, it starts with 500 meg, and as time goes on, as time goes on, the app memory keeps increasing to the point where the app will crash. And that kept happening over and over again, right? So it kept raising tickets the tickets were like a revolving door. A mid-level engineer will be assigned to it. They will try to fix it. It will be say fixed just because they deployed a new version, and a week later, a new ticket is created again. And just looking at the code, right? These guys try to hunt down this memory bug, and they couldn't figure it out. They just couldn't figure it out. So to the point that they now came and asked me to do it. But by then I wasn't really a senior developer anymore. I was now like an assistant manager at the time. I was now like a team, a management, a team lead. And just looking at the code, I could tell that there are only two people in the whole company that could properly diagnose and fix this problem. Myself and my other friend Stanley. Stanley right now is also working at Amazon. That's to tell you his level as well. And the reason I know this is because someone like me, I don't just understand how to write code and stuff like that. Like I can I know runtime characteristics of specific. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I know the runtime characteristics of certain pieces of code. I know how to really dig deep when if you know something calls for it. That's the mark of a senior engineer. Because after that, who else are you going to call? Right?
Right. Well, we're talking about two completely paradigms. If we're going back to 2023, so you want to be a developer,
Uh-huh.
the argument that I'm coming from is focus on how quickly can you conceive an idea, code it up, and ship it, and receive a return. That's it, right? In
Mm-hmm.
regards to everything else, you're speaking from a probably a principal engineer's perspective. I'm speaking from, okay, what is the outcome? The outcome is they conceived an idea and they were able to put in the work to get it out into production. That's it. No one can take that accomplishment away from them. Doesn't matter if it's slow. Doesn't matter if it has all these bugs in it. If it generates more value than it does problems, they succeeded.
I agree
No,
with you.
let me continue with this part.
Okay.
As I'm working on my startup and I'm trying to push this thing through,
Mm-hmm.
I've come to the realization that as valuable as architecture is, and it is absolutely necessary, I don't think anything in this universe, no pun intended, is completed by just a big bang, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything evolves.
Correct.
Everything gets refined over time. Everything gets iterated over time, right? A sperm becomes a toddler after 2 years, right? Through
Mm-hmm.
massive cell reproduction and a whole bunch of other stuff, all right? So, for example, but the whole point is when someone that wants to be a developer decides that they're going to go hard in the paint and they're going to document all their questions to Stack Overflow that they can't get past. They're going to provide answers to some of their questions on Stack Overflow. They're going to answer other people's questions on Stack Overflow. They make a routine every morning to go through questions on Stack Overflow just to see what people are coming up with or running into within the domain or technology that they're working in, right? When they're going full throttle on their journey and documenting or maintaining a technical journal of everything that they're going through until they finally push something out, that's what matters. And it matters to the people that are signing them, and the people that are signing them are not you, right? You're not the first gatekeeper, right? You're the person that can say, yeah, I want to work with you. But initially, the first gatekeeper is going to be HR or some recruiter name. I'm going to leave the names out of it, but it's going to be someone that knows nothing about technology, and all they're looking for is buzzwords and hopefully accomplishments.
Okay,
And I'll pause because I know you have a lot to say.
okay. So let me simplify my thought process, right? I completely agree with you, but I can't call that person a senior developer.
All right, fine, we agree because the focus was on money.
Yes. So you're correct in the sense that being able to, yes, you can in, okay, so the one I've seen, the one I saw was my former company wanted developers like crazy. So they opened up an academy, and that academy was intensive, and they were being paid. The students of the academy were being paid. So it was almost like a school. You showed up to work, you sat down, we brought in lecturers, engineers, former engineers who would come and lecture, give lectures on a specific topic, give assignments. You would take the assignments home and do it. Monday to Friday, it was a job, right? And these guys were trained in a year. And by the time they were all done, they were all mid-level engineers. They were all very good, even to the point that some of the so-called senior engineers in the company at the time started feeling insecure because these young people who a year ago had never even seen code at all, or maybe they just heard about, oh, software engineer or whatever, became competent enough to go toe to toe with these people, because while during that whole 1 year period, right, they were writing software, they were deploying things, they were debugging code, every single day, 9 to 5, right? So to your point, you are absolutely correct in the sense that yes, if somebody did that, you know they would get that outcome. But the point I was making earlier was those people can easily fake being a senior engineer, but doesn't necessarily mean that they are senior engineers. Because take you, for example, right? Look at the amount of time you have spent with WPF, with Xamarin, and now what do they call it, Maui and stuff like that.
Halloumi.
Yes. So there is a lot of context you have, right? That, because one thing that I've also noticed as well in software engineering, and this is even good for our viewers to know, is that just ship things, right? Like you said, nothing just happens big bang, it evolves. So you are absolutely right. Just keep shipping things, because every time you ship something, right, you upgrade. And I've noticed this with myself. Every time I ship something, I could write the same app 5 times, and each time that app is shipped, right, I learn something new, or I figure out a more efficient way of doing something, or I figure out, oh, I could do this thing slightly better. To the point where, do you know what a speed run is?
No, not a
It's
speed run. No.
Okay, so what a speed run is take a software, like take something like Microsoft, take any game of your choice. Let's say it's Mario 64, right?
Hmm.
There are people they call speedrunners, and what speedrunners
I
do,
know what it is now. Yep,
yeah,
I
yeah,
know.
yeah. So where they play the game, and they play the game in the most absurd ways to try to shave off milliseconds off their total time, right?
Yeah, they'll beat the game in like 15 minutes, and yeah.
Exactly. Whereas to a normal person, the game could take like 3 months to beat. So it's like that with programming. Every time, I work on, a new programming problem, I try to solve something. In fact, there's this good friend of mine, the guy I just told you about that, is really, really senior. There was this thing where we had this challenge. We used to challenge each other the person that can write the shortest encryption algorithm. So a shortest encryption method, right? So you give me a piece of text, hello world or something like that, and you have to convert that hello world into some kind of cipher. Doesn't matter whether it's secure or not, but if the person can write it in the fewest amount of, should I say, keywords, or the fewest amount of characters wins. So so I think I have the current winner right now. It's one very very funky um this is where we just take a text, pass it to UTF-8, pass it into MD5 dot to, you know the MD5 hasher, and then convert the hash into a hex string. And the way we wrote it was using some very very clever link logic and stuff like that. But that the point is that consistently doing consistently shipping stuff, right, is how you become a senior developer. And there's no way you can get that in less than 3 years. It's just so much. There's so much knowledge that it's difficult to even fit. Even if somebody went through the pains of documenting all the things you need to know to become senior in quote, it is still too much for it to really sink in your mind in that short period of time.
I agree with you.
Mm.
I'm talking about making money,
Fair enough.
and you're talking about someone that
Ooh, are you still there? Oh,
check check check. You there?
okay. Yeah, yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
All right. So I
Hmm.
guess the video will reconnect eventually.
Yeah.
All right. So the next bullet point is status.
Okay.
I used to think that women actually cared when they asked me what I do, and I said I'm a software engineer. I used to think that they would like, I don't know, scoot up closer to me and it would turn them on. But no, I think it actually is a disfavor. I think instead of them like glowing when I tell them that I have a really smart job, I think they just yawn and they kind of move on. What
Mm.
what was your expectations before you became a developer versus reality? And I still don't have video. You have video of me?
Yeah, 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 I do.
Okay, yeah.
Do you have video of me?
Nope,
Oh, wow.
but it's fine. So what were your expectations?
Oh, your video is okay. Your video is back. Well, if I'm being honest, right, I did not have any expectations whatsoever. And in fact, like you said, it probably played out the opposite way. So the moment I would tell someone, "Oh, I'm a software engineer," they're like, "Oh, cool story, bro." You know, like
Uh,
it wasn't necessarily negative, but it wasn't like, ooh, but I still think that that's changing though. I think as time goes on, and even my parents, up until recently, right, my mom was telling me that I should quit software engineering and just go and work for an oil company because that's what she was able to associate with being successful, you know.
mm,
Uh, but as time went on, obviously that's no longer the case. But I think you have to remember, software engineering is a very, very recent field, right? It came out in less than 50 years. It's not been up to 50 years. So because of it, the norms around what is considered successful, like lawyer or banker or um, you know, pilot or something like that, those norms aren't as prevalent just yet. And I think part of what makes it worse for software engineers is that unlike lawyers and doctors and all those other professions, actual professions, software engineer doesn't require like a university degree, right? Anybody could just get into it and become a software engineer. So I think that's part of why the prestige of it is not really there, you know?
okay, that was status. Let's talk about freedom.
Mm.
developers or people that want to be developers, because we're still under the why
Yes.
does someone want to be a developer, and we talked about, well, some of the reasons why they want to be a developer would be money, maybe status, perhaps freedom,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, Back in my day, there was no expectation of working from home or even working remote. There was the expectation of driving to or commuting to work, finding a parking spot uh, at on site at the office, and yeah, you had to show up. Here's your cubicle, and you do your work. Uh, Things have changed a lot. I haven't been on site in probably 4 years, right?
Mm. Let me
What
see.
about you?
It's the same thing with me. Yeah, me too. I haven't been on site since I think I quit cyberspace in 2018, or was it 2017? No, it was 2018. So yeah, 4 years. Okay, so 2023 would make it 5 years now. So yeah, I haven't been on site for 5 years, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. So there are some restrictions. I've been working within the healthcare space off and on probably for the past 5 years. And when you work within a regulated industry, you can expect that you'll have the issued laptop, which is their property, which means that you can't just casually just surf the internet as if it was your own laptop, right?
Hmm.
Because it's being monitored, even if you're even if you're not going anywhere suspect. They the expectation is it's for work and it's not for leisure,
Hmm.
right? So, and the biggest thing that's kind of disappointing when I accept those type of jobs is I have zero possibility of being a digital nomad. I would love to like go to the Philippines or Thailand or I don't know, London or some other country and just chill for like a month, 3 months, living somewhere else and still making U.S. wages.
Mm.
And when I have issued laptops because I'm working within a regulated space, I can't do that because the sysadmins will get notified when I attempt to connect to the internet outside of the United States. And
Mm.
so, again, we're on the topic of freedom, and well, it depends on the industry that you're working in, and if they issue you a development machine. You have freedom to work from home, but you don't have the freedom to work wherever you want to work if you're kind of global like me, like Jason Bourne.
Yeah.
So,
I think I would push back a little bit on that because I think your case is actually the exception. I think for the most part, most companies allow you to use some kind of VPN, right, to connect to the internal network systems. But like you said, the original stuff you said still applies, right? It's not your laptop, it's a company tool. You're not supposed to surf the web on it. But many companies, right, now have access, now have this VPN software so that you can connect to the private network even if you are anywhere else in the world. So uh, I would say that your case is the exception. But
well, the VPN still exists. They just won't let you work from outside the United States or Canada.
mm,
That's been my personal experience,
that's
and this
crazy.
is within healthcare, right? So there's laws, there's federal laws that apply to healthcare as well as maybe some other industries, but definitely healthcare.
Mm,
Um, there's laws about the data that's on the servers, and those servers must be within a certain boundary of a region or a country. So there's I don't know how much that's related to um, me not being able to work out of Thailand or something, but
yeah.
yeah, that's been my experience.
But I also think that it's a red herring in a way because the reality of software engineering is you won't even have that kind even if you did have that freedom, that freedom would be kind of meaningless, right? So
Mm,
let me explain. So like the kind of work you would be doing, right? Collaborating with people, having meetings in specific time zones, um, or even just the workload itself, right? It wouldn't allow you to travel to Thailand and, pick when you want to have your meetings and be able to move around as you see fit because tomorrow is Monday and you have to do stand up with the rest of the team at 8 a.m., you know, and stuff like that. So it,
Well, I mean, that's assuming that you're not a freelancer, but yeah.
yeah, so like you see this thing all the time, right? And it's one of those like a misconception, right? Is you see all this day in the life of a software engineer and they show ping pong tables and stuff like that. The reality is that if you work at those companies, nobody's going to chase you around. Nobody's going to say, "Oh, don't use the ping pong table or anything." But if you're really serious about your work, right? The kind of workload you would have to take on, that ping pong table is not even going to do shit for you, right? It's not even going to do anything for you because you are so you have so much responsibility that playing around or exercising the freedom just feels uh it feels improper, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
I can give you an example. Like take your PS5 for example, right? That's behind you. One would assume that being a software engineer, you can just fire up the PS5 anytime and play on hours on end and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is, when you have a project that you care about, any time you spend on that PS5 just feels like a waste of time, right? Like spending 4 hours just feels like, oh, I could have been using 2 hours of this to work on XYZ project and I would have made so much progress on the project and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where, like I said, when you get there, right, that freedom isn't as enticing as it looks to be when you're on the outside. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So, yeah. Because again, one question that people don't ask is why is it that all these day in the life videos that you hear and they show all these amenities, but they don't show anybody using them? The reason they don't show anybody using them is not because HR is there saying, oh, attacking people or anything like that. No, it's really there. It's really free. It's really do whatever you like. But the realities of living in is okay. Okay, I have a good explanation. Is the difference between being a tourist in say Florida and living and working in Florida. The two are very, very different experiences. If you're a tourist, then all the attractions of Florida are, Disneyland and all those kind of things are enticing and they're like, wow, can you imagine if I was living close to Disneyland? I would be going there every day. But the reality is that maybe you would go once or twice, but that's about it. More often than not, you are so busy trying to live your life, trying to make rents, trying to do other things that it never even occurs to you that Disneyland is like maybe a drive an hour away or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, things you take for granted once you're actually there.
Yeah.
So we discussed why people want to be software developers. We discussed the expectations and we discussed reality. Is there anything else that we left out?
Well, all I would say, so here's the thing, right? If I was to start all over, so let's say there was a younger version of me that is, wants to go into software engineering and is looking at this video and it's like, man, I want to be like these guys. Um, what kind of advice would I give me? Well, I think the number one thing is, enjoy you have to be genuinely curious. You have to be somebody who follows your curiosity because that's the only thing that would sustain you in the long run. If you're not genuinely interested in learning, you know, stuff, whether it's, programming languages or new platforms or new technology, if you're not genuinely curious, if you're just doing it because you have an end goal in mind, chances are you will get frustrated and chances are you will drop off, right? But if you're doing it out of just following your curiosity, trying to learn on your own, you know, following the process, trusting the process, then you will definitely, make it to the other side. But more importantly, I think the thing to remember really is just, um, if I was to start all over, well, I would pick up web design like I did when I was much younger. Pick up web design and just keep going from there. Just keep going because there's always someone who is more, there's always more to learn, right? Like one of the things with this field of ours is that the technology tends to refresh itself, meaning that after a certain point of time, the fact that you know WPF has very little bearing as to someone who is learning, who wants to come and learn Maui, for example, out of the gate, right? Because over time, knowledge gets buried. So it gives you more context if you are in the system and if you've done all those previous technologies. But there are certain knowledge, there are certain, uh, in other words, the point I'm trying to make is that our field doesn't really reward the incumbents the way something like law does, right? So law really rewards the incumbents, meaning that somebody who has 10 years in the bar, that person has far more knowledge and their knowledge is far more relevant than someone who has 10 years in software engineering. Because that 10 years, 3 or 4 years of it may be technologies that have become extinct, aka Silverlight, remember, or Flash. so
Yeah.
so somebody, so the truth is, if you are new to software engineering, don't be intimidated when you hear that, oh, this person has 20 years of experience, because more often than not, maybe only the last 5 years of experience is actually relevant. And you can also catch up. You don't need to know all the low level TCP/IP to be an accomplished software engineer. But to become a senior software engineer, you need to know. Yeah. So, but you catch my drift though. So.
Yeah, I get it. What I would recommend is the following. Do it until you become it. Right?
Mm,
It worked for me. At least I think it did. The other part is consistency. This is it would be a marathon if you were just writing code. It's a triathlon when you are literally trying to start a business, your own business.
mm,
And I personally think that's how you become senior status, is when you understand the business uh, opportunity costs
mm,
for things that you're doing right now, for the decisions that you're making, for the lack of analysis that you're doing. Everything needs to be, a lot of things need to be informed.
mm,
So I think if I could give my own self advice, when I was preparing to get started in software development, I would say conceive an idea and try to make it a product,
mm,
and go through that journey and don't tap out. And I think that provides so much value um, in business, especially when you want to unlock the architect achievement or even senior developer achievement. The fact that you can understand or comprehend that the reason why you're receiving a paycheck in the first place is to deliver value to paying customers, and that there's there's a reason why these customers need a solution, and it's not about React, it's not about Maui, it's not about F sharp or Clojure. It's about a problem being solved. And the sooner that you can demonstrate how money is being made or money is being saved based on cost analysis coupled with your technologies that you're choosing and the solutions that you're building from writing code, I think the more you're going to be able to uh, basically declare yourself or determine yourself an outlier from everybody else.
Mm.
And I know that was long-winded, but I sincerely believe that start your own business or at least go through the motions of doing so that you can really appreciate what it means to deliver technical solutions and to really make you an outlier in which how much you get paid based on how you're able to bargain at the interview table, which should be very business centric versus all the other developers.
So,
And I could keep going,
yeah,
but yeah.
I agree with that, but I think that what you just described is a slightly different role, right? What I think you described is the technical manager role, right? That's the role of a technical manager. Now, a technical manager and a senior engineer are like two sides of the same coin. The senior engineer's job, right, is what I
We're,
described.
we're so let's. I didn't mean to cut you off, but let's try to back it up because I think you had corrected me, and I thought that we had decided that we're no longer focused on senior engineer. We're focused on how to get that money.
Okay, okay. So, fine, fine. Okay, let me back up then. I think
Okay.
so. Here's what I think. Like you said, um, it doesn't necessarily have to be a business. And I know why I'm saying it this way because when people hear business, sometimes they get intimidated and stuff like that. Sometimes it could start from something small, right? In the sense that write your own blog. If you're starting out, see if you can design your own blog with, technologies and stuff like that. But essentially, be the what you, I think the nugget here is you have to be in charge of software. You have to be in charge of developing, deploying something, and that's what will help you grow quickly because you being in charge is what is going to bring the interest and the focus um, and the grit, right? To be able to see it through. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a business that you're collecting cash and deploying the software and stuff like that. Especially if it can be very intimidating, especially if you're still new. But at the same time, you have to be responsible for something, whether it's a personal blog, whether it's a personal software, whether it's a pet project, whether it's something. But yes, you're right. Have a project that you are solely responsible for and you are contributing to, and I think that's the quickest way to learn because that forces you to your stretch the boundaries of your understanding and your competence, right? As opposed to being given tasks to do and just executing them in the context of a job. Then in that case, you won't really grow because you're just doing what you're told. But if you're the one responsible
Nope,
for,
I'm pushing back.
okay, go ahead.
I'm pushing back. Okay. So, is a principal engineer or does a principal engineer get paid to provide technical solutions? That's the question. You have to think about it.
No, no, I know the answer, but I don't want us to go down the previous
We're
conversation.
not. We're not.
Okay.
We're not. I asked that question because when I push on work on a project that's business centric,
Mhm.
right? What I'm saying is understand the trade-offs and go through the motions to figure out what's really relevant for you to write code and what really isn't necessary. And with a principal engineer, I would argue that they're not getting paid to think of technical solutions. They're getting paid to solve business problems with the skill set of both technical and business. And so they can borrow from different paradigms where it makes sense. If you don't have to spend 3 months on a software engineering project because you had the foresight to look at some analysis reports and then make a informed decision based on this data, and this data. What the customer is really looking for is a tweak in this process and not necessarily a technical solution. Then you just saved a lot of money, right?
I I get you, but you see, I think
At the bargaining table, when we're talking about not a senior developer, but we're talking about how to make senior money, it's way more convincing at an interview table to talk to executives and when you're interviewing for a high ranking technical position on how you solve the problem. And it doesn't necessarily have to be how you wrote uh, Python. It could be how you analyzed it and the various options that you had, both technical and business. And again, it's focused on money and foresight and not being a paid coder. So,
I get you, but
okay.
here's the thing. You said principal engineer, and in my mind, a principal engineer is senior to both a senior developer and a technical manager. So when you use these terms, right, there is a picture I have in my head, and there is what you are explaining, right?
Okay.
A principal engineer is exactly what you described, but a principal engineer is more senior to even a senior developer and even a so for example a principal engineer, a company comes and says, hey, we want to solve this business problem. We don't know how you're going to do it, but we need some technical expertise to fixing this business problem, right? You, that information is relayed to a principal engineer, right? And that principal engineer's job is to sit down and say, how do we solve this problem? What tools can we put in place? What makes sense to do this thing? We knowing fully well that the customer doesn't really care about any of the technical details, right? So the principal engineer's job is to bring the architect. So the principal engineer could also wear the architect hat to say, okay, for us to meet this business objective, we need this, we need this, we need that, and we need these things to work in this particular way without any details, right? He hands that over to the architect, right? The architect will sit down and say, okay, how do I put these things together? What should the architecture look like? Does this thing make sense? Let me look at the amount of, let me look at how many users do we have, how many transactions per second, all those other nitty gritty, right?
Nope. 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 No.
Okay, so in your opinion, right? What's the hierarchy? Technical manager, principal
It,
engineer, senior engineer.
I, I'm not disputing the hierarchy. What I
Okay.
am disputing is problem solving. What I am disputing is not just because it's handed down from business doesn't mean that it has to be a technical solution. If we're going back into how to make money within the shortest period of time, I would argue it would be when you're getting to know your employer, but you're framing it as your partner, how can you help them achieve business objectives? How do you convince them that you're not just a paid coder, but you're genuinely interested in helping them achieve business objectives? That doesn't always require code. And so
I
when you when
I
okay,
so let's not speak over each other. You're right. But
okay.
understand that what you are describing is not what a company is looking for when they are looking for a developer to add to their team, right? Because they already have, hold on, they already have developers and engineers and all those other people that fit this role you're talking about. Let's say they're looking for a sixth engineer to be part of the team to help them meet whatever business objective, right? Those are not the developers they pay the big bucks. The developers they pay the big bucks are typically the ones leading teams, managing teams. Those are what I call technical managers, right? It's different from just normal software engineers. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Okay.
And we can agree to disagree.
Hmm.
What I'm trying to focus on is when you're negotiating your compensation package, are
Okay.
you going to be negotiating from I'm a paid coder and this is why I deserve this amount of money which is outlier money, which is extremely above the average uh, market salary or whatever you want to market rate,
Hmm.
chances are you're going to have a challenging time convincing uh, HR or the executives that they should pay you almost two times or maybe even three times what the going rate is for a coder because you're that good at coding.
Okay.
However, if you're able to frame it such that yes, I have the technical chops, but also I realize that as a business, you're not really looking for technical chops. You're really looking to achieve certain business objectives, whether it's to grow your business or to sustain your business or not lose your business. That's what matters to you, and you need to retain your customers, right? So here's the skill sets that I have. Yes, it's extremely technical, but also I know how to conduct analysis so I can make informed decisions that may require a technical solution or it may require another solution that's not as technical but more people focused, right? When you're able, again, the context is money and how you negotiate within a certain time span to get the most you can. And when you're speaking at that level, I mean, you're. I'll pause for right now.
I agree, but here's what I'm saying. A company will not hire a junior developer and pay that junior developer the money of their principal engineer. It doesn't work like that. Typically, if a company is hiring for a position, right, they have a framework in which they know that this position, this vacancy is going to lie in their hierarchy of the company.
Who
That's what,
said they're interviewing for a junior developer?
no, no, that's where I'm getting at, right?
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at in the sense that there is a hierarchy in the company. So for you to demonstrate that you are deserving of principal engineer or senior lead engineer or whatever, that comes with the big compensation of those seats, right? You are right. You have to demonstrate more than just technical chops. You have to also show how to that you also have knowledge of, coming up with solutions, problem solving, all the things you mentioned, and that's 100% correct. But understand that those positions are not the positions that most people who are just coming out of school or who are just entering into software engineering positions are going to necessarily apply for. Another example is, let's say, for example, you wanted to go for that kind of role. You just can't do that with 1 year of experience. There's no amount of business solving jujitsu that you're going to say to them that's going to convince them to say, okay, let's carry this big portion of this project, right? The management of the direction of this project and hand it to somebody who only has 1 year of experience. That that doesn't work. Normally, it's people who have already shown competence, right? In the junior, in the lower levels that can now come up and now step up to companies and say, hey, you can now hire me as a consultant or you can hire me as a principal engineer because I have this experience. I have all these extra problem solving skills. But just to get into the door, no, you don't need any of that. You just need to show that I know what I'm talking about and I can actually ship. So I've been part of a process of which software was shipped, and you will be able to get into the door. But to be paid the big bucks, you have to fit in at the level of the senior guys. Does that make sense? So
Who,
if
who,
so,
who,
so, so let's say for example you wanted to get you go to a company and they say, oh, we need a new software engineer, right? And you explain to them that, oh, I just have only 1 year of experience, but I can bring this value, that value, blah 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 blah. Even if the company hires you, right, where would they put you? Would they put you under someone else who is already playing that role for the company, or will they put you on the same level with that person?
you're we're not talking about experience as in 1 year or any type of time, right? This
Okay.
is what we talked about earlier. We don't measure experience in years or timeline. We
Hmm.
measure experience in accomplishments. We measure experience in mistakes. that you can save a company from.
Hmm.
That's what the experience is.
Yes, but understand that there is a finite amount of there's a finite amount of time it takes to do anything meaningful, and that's just the truth about it, right? You can't, there's no amount of coffee you drink that would allow you to execute a meaningful project, a deep, rewarding, you know, project that has customers, that, all this kind of stuff, and execute it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 1 month. That's not how it works.
Okay. So this is interesting. I'm not sure if you want to go there, but this is interesting. So who would you rather hire?
Mhm.
Option one is a developer that has 4 years of experience
Okay.
working in your typical mainstream, usually low performing organization,
Mhm.
or someone that graduated from a Y Combinator program, which I think is 3 months. I think the first, at least, segment of it, and they got through it, and they were able to have a concept, quickly spin out a proof of concept, as in some code, and take some measurements from it, and they went through the program,
Mhm.
and they were affiliate. They went through the 3 month thing, and then they finished the first stage and got, like, I don't know, angel investors after 12 months, and that's their experience.
Mhm.
Would you take the person with 4 years of experience
Mhm.
working for a mediocre or maybe even low performing organization? Or
Mhm.
would you take the Y Combinator who did 3 months of a hardcore program and then had the accomplishment of receiving some seed funding?
Neither.
Okay.
And the reason
Why?
yeah, good question. Neither, because the fact that you're able to crap out a hello world with generators, and you use Node.js to write it and all this kind of stuff, doesn't mean that you're a good software engineer. Because you have to understand that any software engineering project that you're working on that has value of any sort is something that hasn't been done before. It's very rare for someone to be rebuilding an exact clone or replica of something that already exists.
Right.
Because of it, right, the challenges that you're going to face, right, coming out of the Y Combinator, right, you were able to crap up this app, you got a lot of funding, there's a lot of momentum, right? Granted, that person would be able to learn much quicker than the guy who has spent 4 years, but there's still so much he doesn't know about a successful product, because 3 months is just too short a time period to hold on to, work on an app, architect an app, deploy an app, have customers work on an app, bugs were filed, do a lot of problem solving, firefighting, all that kind of stuff. Even if you compress it into a very fast paced startup, it still takes individuals at least a year, 2 years of that kind of fast paced drinking coffee every day for them to have enough experience to have seen everything. Because that's what happens with software engineers, right? Is you are, I've told you this before, you're a senior software engineer the moment your errors come back to bite you in the ass. Because if you've not had if you don't have that feedback, there is no correction. And 3 months, 6 months, sometimes maybe a year is not enough time for you to have that feedback of your decisions coming back to haunt you, right? And because of that, I can't really, carry $1 million project and put in your care, because for me that would be irresponsible. Does that make sense?
What I understand what you're saying, and I used to think, I would say, just like you. I think you're more senior than me. Technically, I do. However, if we're talking about business objectives, we're not talking about uh, industrial engineering. We're talking about business. We're talking about capitalism. What the focus is to adapt to market conditions. What the focus is to quickly, if not, be the first to market before your competitors. as I said earlier in this discussion, there really is in reality no big bang. There really is no this architecture is 90% what we need. Everything is in place. All the dominoes are set. Snowball effect take place. No, things things have versions to it, right? I if I were hiring somebody, I would want to hire, and it depends on the context, obviously.
Hmm.
But if we needed to hurry up and create a product to compete with another organization, or we need to quickly create a product that's proof of concept that is early within the marketplace,
Hmm.
then I need that proof of concept to get spit out, and I need to take measurements from the marketplace. I don't need it to be perfectly engineered, right? And I know perfectly is condescending because that's what a lot of managers say. Like, we don't need to be perfect. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to be like that. Like, yes, quality means a lot, but what means more is to figure out if this is going to even achieve what we need as a business,
So,
and
okay.
and then we can take steps to figure out if we need to do a rewrite because this was quickly shipped out and it's not maintainable. I'm listening.
So you are right, and I agree with you. But my caveat there is that there is a baseline amount of knowledge you need to have, right? That baseline amount of knowledge, after you have that baseline, then everything you are saying applies 100%, right? But that baseline of experience is something that you can't get in 3 months or 6 months. That's my argument. Does that make sense? If you had made this same exactly what you said, but you said 1 year, for example, then I would agree with you because with 1 year, that's enough buffer for you to, even if you don't know something, you have an idea of how to look it up or how to quickly find a solution to that problem. But with 3 months, there's so much you don't know. And that is just disastrous to put someone like that in charge of any project. Because 3 months is not even enough for you to even yeah, I don't see it happening. I don't, even if you're a genius, like it's that serious. I mean it. Even if you're a genius, right? It's not enough time from zero to wherever. It's not enough time for you to, let's say a different example. In fact, what tends to happen with most people is that the people who fall into this category you're talking about actually didn't start at Y Combinator. They probably started coding when they were in high school, right?
Mhm.
And then by the time they got to Y Combinator, they already had a lot of, should I say, baseline technical knowledge that the Y Combinator now comes and adds on top of that. Then I get what you're saying. But if it's someone who hasn't coded before, like I just go and get a Joe Schmo from,
We're not saying that.
yeah, that's not going to work.
We're
That's
not
my,
saying that.
okay.
We're not saying that. So what we're saying is someone that has the skill set to take an idea
Hmm.
and to put it into production very quickly, even and it won't scale in production. That's we don't care about that at this stage, and
Okay.
it's with emphasis on stage,
Mm.
right? There's phases to this. I know a lot of managers or people in leadership roles, they think software development is like one phase, right? And we're going to have so many teams. They're all going to start at the same time. Big bang,
Boom.
right? Speaking from experience. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is quickly put out something so
Okay.
that the business can take measurements. And then whatever happens after that, the business can make a decision.
No,
That's all I'm saying.
no, no. In that case, then I agree with you. In fact, if you look at whether it's Google, whether it's okay, no, Google will be an exception. But if you look at Facebook, Facebook was literally that, right? Mark Zuckerberg and a few other friends of his who weren't really experienced like that started just, working on this PHP project they called Facebook, and it started to explode. And then they had to innovate on the job and learn on the job and all this kind of stuff. And in the early days of Facebook, it was like a military camp. Everybody was head head first into the code base and trying to do whatever they could to make sure that Facebook survived. So yes, from your perspective, if that's what you are saying, then yes, you're correct.
That's what I'm saying. Now,
Yeah.
maybe what I'm going to attempt to capture on your side is, well, Scott, depending on the complexity of what needs to be quickly built, it's extremely likely that while building something that is relatively complex, that they're just not going to be able to push it out in 3 months.
Mhm.
In fact, after the first month, there's going to be so many bugs in it, and they're not going to be skilled or experienced enough to know how to debug properly as an engineer and how to maturely write their code so that it's testable enough or test automatable enough, if that's even a term,
Mm.
that it could grind to a halt because everything that they're doing is manual to try to resolve whatever buggy software that they're trying to push out.
Gotcha.
And I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
There
Because
has to be
because
some experience of maturity of being able to automate checks and balances as you're doing the proof of concept.
because like you rightly said, right? Being a software engineer, a senior software engineer like you are, you've seen this happen over and over again. How many times
It
have you
happens
seen
with me.
how many times have you seen it where you start a project, there's a lot of velocity in the beginning, and after the first 1 month, everything grinds to a halt. New features are now so painful to add that because there's just so much mistakes and issues with the code base that adding a new feature becomes almost impossible, right?
Yep.
And one thing you learn being a proper software engineer is, in fact, that's what software engineering is really, is how do I make my code easy to change? And the techniques, the tools, the ideas behind it aren't necessarily something you can just pick up in a book and just get straight away. It takes a little bit of refinement, and that refinement comes with a lot of pain, or it comes,
Personal practice.
yeah, it comes with personal practice. It comes with even someone else showing you the way to tell you, hey, don't write code like this, write it like this. And that person who shows you the way is the senior engineer, right? It's the senior engineer that would be like, hey, have an interface separate from your implementation, right? Don't just instantiate new classes and just execute it immediately. Even though the person will be like, but I read in the book that object-oriented programming and inheritance and
Yep.
you get what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm alluding to, in the sense that um, it takes a while. It's not something you can um, just get in 6 months, which is what most people who come to me say, hey, I want to go into software engineering. No, no, the best one I heard when I was in Nigeria was, what would it take for me? I have never coded before, but what would it take for me to get a job at Google? And I'm like, right. you know, it's like, yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is
I,
very unlikely.
yeah, I can't even get into Google. I mean, I haven't interviewed for them, but I'm not good at memorizing how to do a radix sort or a merge sort or write a red and black tree or a B plus tree. Nor do I want to volunteer a week of my life trying to memorize those algorithms.
Yeah. You know, I think you would be able to get into Google. I just think that you don't have the you don't have the zeal to do it. I think that's what's really going on. Because let's be
As in the motivation, you mean?
yeah, the
Is
motivation.
that a synonym?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because let's be honest, if you had a beach delivery problem that required you to use merge sort, right? You would so kill that problem, right? Let's be honest. Because one is you can see what the business objectives of that merge sort would be, right? You can see how this algorithm that I want to write is important for my business. And then you would take it seriously. And then when you are solving it, you would get that gratification of, hey, I was able to write this very clever algorithm that solves this problem in a very, very nifty way. Like, you remember when I was doing that synchronization algorithm I was telling you about, how to synchronize like playlists and stuff like that, from two devices. And let's say you want a device to, you want people to be able to make changes on the offline playlist, and then when it goes online, it should be able to sync with the minimum minimum amount of operations done, right? That was an algorithm that's a common algorithm, right? But it's something that it wasn't until I had a real problem I needed to solve that I had the motivation to solve it. But if I was asked during a Google interview to solve that kind of problem, I would be like, ah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the majority of my experience is providing a business solution and not solving a computer science question.
True,
Like
true.
it's, I'm sorry, I don't write algorithms. I don't. I write business solutions.
Hmm, yeah. Anyway, I think you're right. I think business solutions are ultimately what matter, right? Um, I know I keep using this Facebook example, but it's actually true. Facebook was successful not because they wrote PHP. In fact, them using PHP, in my opinion, is just a happenstance of history. It has, they could have as well used Ruby on Rails. Like I think Twitter was written in Ruby on Rails, and the
Yeah.
truth is nobody cares and nobody will care, because it's not what matters at the end of the day. What matters is what solution are you bringing? What value is the code you are writing bringing? And as long as it's bringing that value, then everything else is kind of secondary to that point. Um, but I would also make the argument, the counter argument too, that sometimes good software engineering has value in and of itself. Like in the case of WhatsApp, right? Everybody and their uncle had a messaging app, but WhatsApp ended up winning because they had the most superior technology that allowed them to scale with as little resources as necessary, right? And with as much uptime that people began to rely on WhatsApp. People began to rely on WhatsApp almost as much, if not more than SMS text messages, right? And WhatsApp was written in a functional language, Erlang, and Erlang was written um, um, for the sole purpose of having maximum uptime and using the least amount of resources. So WhatsApp for the longest time was able to scale with investor money, knowing fully well that if they had used any other tool to build it, then they would have run out of money very, very quickly. But WhatsApp was able to get money from investors and stretch that money to be able to scale to the world, to write software that could scale to the global stage, you know. So that's just an example. And in fact, one of the reasons Facebook paid so much for WhatsApp was because of that engineering chops, you know.
I would argue that WhatsApp probably sustained its success because of the language. Um, but really, it's kind of a factor of you choose your language, you choose your culture,
Mm.
right? And so when you think about it being written in Erlang, who do you know that's a Erlang that can write in Erlang? I don't know anybody. Do you know
True.
anybody? Right?
I have like two friends that are very good
Okay.
with Erlang and Elixir, but
And
yeah,
I'm willing to bet that those two friends
are
that you
really good.
know,
Yeah,
they know more than just Erlang,
true.
which means that they are able to paradigm shift when providing a solution, right? They can think of different paradigms, which means that they probably tend to, if they're working in Erlang, they probably work with other people that have the same personality or similar personalities, and they're
Yeah.
probably really, really smart, right?
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the caveats or the advantages of choosing the technology. It's not really the technology, it's what that technology attracts in the ecosystem or the culture that you want to develop,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And yeah, and that's a very, very powerful insight because it's almost like picking a tribe in a way, right? Members of a particular tribe tend to behave a certain kind of way. And depending on what technology you pick, that determines the kind of tribe members you attract as a business, right? So that makes sense. I think yeah, this we've gone way past 1 hour. So maybe we should put it on. We should adjourn this meeting and continue in next episode.
Call to action for the probably dozen viewers of this video. Call to action is share this content with somebody that is early in their software development career or that are considering software development as a career. We want to get what we want to get. We want to get 100 shares within 1 week.
Yep.
All right, and that if it's 100 shares within 1 week, I'm not really good at math, but I would think that that's more than 200 views in the first week.
Yeah.
All right,
Hmm.
at least. So that's a call to action for anybody that appreciated the content. And Odie and I are just getting started with this, so I'm sure that there's certain things that we can improve on, especially myself. And so put in the comment section how you think we can be more helpful by the type of content that we put out or the habits that we need to get rid of.
Yeah.
And that's it. So,
All right. So
you have anything else to add?
nothing much left.
All right, cool. It's been real.